Hi, I'm Nicholas Lodge and welcome to this video where I'll be introducing you to my brand new NL collection by Katie Sue Designs Toadstool and Mushroom Mold. This innovative mold allows you to make lots of different variations on toadstools and mushrooms. So let's get started. So here is my brand new mold. This is my Nicholas Lodge collection by Katie Sue Designs Toadstool and Mushroom Mold. So this mold enables us to make 5 different variations on the cap. The cap is the top part of the mushroom. And then we have the stalks or stems. So again, there are 5 different variations on here. And of course, you can, on the larger ones, mix and match the stems and the caps. And then this is the gill mold or veiner. So this will actually create the gills on the underneath part of the toadstool or mushroom. So if we have a look here, you can see that these are the components of your mushroom. So you have the cap, you have the stalk or the stem, and then you have the gills, which is this part here. Now this mold, like most of my Flower Pro and Nicholas Lodge collection molds, you can use, as I said, different types of paste in here. Generally, this would be the same as things like my Nicholas Lodge collection antler, my pine cones, where mostly I would use modified sugar paste or rolled fondant. Alternatively, you can also use 50-50 paste, half gum paste or flour paste and half sugar paste or rolled fondant. You could use the flour paste or gum paste in these as well, but generally to get nice definition, you want a slightly softer paste. So modified sugar paste or fondant is the best way to go. If you use just straight sugar paste or rolled fondant, it would be too soft and it will also take a lot longer to dry as well. As you can see here, this shows just an assortment of some of the toadstools and mushrooms I'm going to be talking and showing you in this video. These are all being made to look very realistic. All right, so we have obviously different color variations and different sizes from the 5 parts of the mold. But I also have a second video, so check that out, where I'll be showing more fantasy style mushrooms and toadstools, like fairy ones, and ones done in slightly different techniques. Also in that video, I will be showing how to place the mushrooms and toadstools on cakes, on bûche de Noël, the Yule log, and other applications. So when making toadstools and mushrooms, I normally start either with white or with a sort of an ivory or a cream color. Now the ivory and cream color is really the best option when doing the sort of like mushrooms in the natural sort of brown colors, because when you start off with a cream color, you almost have a foundation and you're just gonna add then some chocolate brown, as you will see a little later on in this video. When I'm doing, for example, mushrooms or toadstools like this one, of course, has got like white, and then you've got sort of white and gray and brown and a little bit of red. So generally, it's best to start off with white paste for this one. So, you know, depending what color variation. And the nice thing about toadstools and mushrooms, there are sort of thousands of color variations. So, of course, you can look on the internet or just develop your own colors based on the hues, time of year, the seasons, what other things you're going to be putting with this. Now, when we modify the sugar paste or rolled fondant, and I've used this technique, as I said, on some of my other videos. So what we're going to do here is going to start off by taking some sugar paste rolled fondant here. I'm using the Renshaw brand, but basically this will work with any brand of sugar paste or rolled fondant. And you're going to take 115 grams. Okay, so we're going to take 115 grams here. There we go. So 115 grams of rolled fondant, which is approximately 4 ounces or 1/4 pound. Okay, I generally work in grams always, but as I said, so 115 grams. And then what we're going to do is just going to make this into like almost like a little bowl shape. And then I'm going to take here, I'm going to take some Tylose or CMC. I'm going to take 1/4 teaspoon. So just 1/4 level teaspoon of Tylose or CMC. I'm going to add that to the here. And then I'm going to take a comparable amount of vegetable shortening or white fat. Okay, and generally I just do that by eye with my finger. So this is what we call modifying rolled fondant or sugar paste. And I said this is exactly the same technique I use when I'm doing pine cones, except I'd use brown. Now, when you're making the cream color, you can start off with cream sugar paste or ivory sugar paste. For this lighter one is more of an ivory color. Or alternatively, of course, you could just add a little bit of cream gel or paste color. Any brand will be fine. And if you don't have cream color, just use some ivory and a little bit of yellow, and that will give you this nice sort of dark cream, okay? So it doesn't really, it's not important, but just something along those sort of cream tones. If you watch some of my Flower Pro videos, like when I do my autumn leaves, my maple leaves and things like that, I start off with a cream color when I'm using those beautiful oranges and reds, and you get much better, it's to give you a better foundation. So once you've mixed this through, we're going to pop this into a plastic bag. I've marked this modified fondant. Incidentally, this will actually give you enough product to make a whole set of the 5. So if you mix that amount, which is 115 grams, that actually will give you enough to make, with some left over, 5 different varieties of toadstools or mushrooms. Of course, you could also make, say, 2 or 3 of them in white, and then the remaining paste you could color cream and do some in cream. So that's going to just sit for about 10 or 15 minutes to really to sort of firm up, because when you add the Tylose gum to it, it has to firm up. So I'm just going to leave this for 10 or 15 minutes. When I come back, I'm going to start on the making of the stalks or stems. So now my paste has firmed up a little bit, I'm going to start working on this. Now, I found when making these, it's best to make the stalks first, or the stems of the mushroom. Okay, this part here, this doesn't have to be dry, but it's just that when you then make the cap, we use this as a gauge to make sure the hole we make is going to be the right size for the different size stems or stalks, okay? This is just the way I found easiest to do this. So anyway, in your download, obviously in your download, you'll have all the sizes of these. This one is the largest stalk, that is going to be number 10 small, and then this is going to be number 8, all right? And then these will both be number 8 small, and then this is going to be number 6. So remember, this is all in the download, and you'll be able to obviously see all of the sizes. Now, so I'm going to show you here the large one, then I'm going to show you some variations on this. So this is going to be number 10 small. So that means we're going to use the size guide. So I'm using here my Flower Pro plastic size guide. This is wonderful because especially when working with browns and colors like that, if you get dusting powder on there, you can just wipe this clean. So you're going to take a number 10 small, so I want to just going to go through the hole, okay? And then I'm going to measure another piece the same size, all right, which I'm just going to do by hand, by eye. Now, when you make the toadstools and mushroom stems, you can do this in the same way as I do rose cones, pine cones, especially things like rose cones. You can have the option of either making both halves at the same time, or making one half, let it dry, and then sticking the dry half to the soft half. This is not quite as complex a design as the pine cone, so I personally find it's easier just to do it all in one stage. The extra ball of paste I have, I'm going to just put underneath my little cup here like that. Now, when using the mold, we're going to use a little bit of vegetable shortening or fat. And so I'm just going to put a little, I usually just put that on the back of my hand. Now, you can use your finger to rub this in, or you can also just use a brush like this, and you can just go in with a brush, just a light little tiny bit, not too much, of the vegetable shortening or fat. This just helps with release, but also on the mushroom caps, this will keep the paste in place. Now, just remember, as with all of my molds, whether it's the Flower Pro or Nicholas Lodge brand, when you finish with the mold, you're either going to put this in the dishwasher, or you're going to use just some washing up liquid, some dish soap, nail brush, just scrub it and then rinse it and let it dry. I generally dry these in a food dehydrator, which I use a lot for drying components, including the mushroom. So we're going to take your paste. Now, this paste, because it has gum added to it, the Tylose is a gum, just like you would if you're doing flour paste, we just condition that with a little bit of vegetable shortening. I'm going to roll it into a sausage here. If it feels a little sticky, you can just put a little bit of corn flour onto there as well. And then we're going to place this into the mold. And I'm going to use my cosmetic sponge. So just like the technique I use here with my pine cones. Now, you're going to have just a little tiny bit over, all right, on some of them will fit perfectly inside, but as I said, this one is going to have a little bit of extra over, which if you wanted to make a longer stem, so if you wanted to make a mushroom with, like, for example, if you were going to do 2 mushrooms on a cake and you wanted to use this larger stem, you could actually take one of them and you cut it off level, or even trim it down a little bit, and then one you can actually extend past the end. So you could even use a regular number 10 size to make an extension on there. So there are different ways of using the mold, but it's going to make sure it's level. And then you can cut this off. So I'm going to use my scraper. So this is my Flower Pro scraper. I'm just going to press this on with the scraper, so make sure that that's level. Now there are three options we have here. So the first option I'm going to show you is using toothpicks. Now these are often called ornate or fancy toothpicks or cocktail sticks. They have these carved ends on them, and I use these because once the paste is set around there, they wouldn't come out. If you use a regular cocktail stick or toothpick, they come out very easily. Also, regular cocktail sticks or toothpicks are often a lot thinner and break very easily. Now, so having your mushroom or toadstool on a toothpick, the advantage is there when you put that in the top of a cake or in the side of a cake, it's going to go in very, very easily. You don't have to use straws or picks or things for it. So that's one option. And then I'm going to show you the second option would be to use wire. If you wanted to wire these into, say, an autumn fall arrangement, you put them on wires. And then thirdly, when I'm using these on cupcakes, on cakes where, like a cookie, if you're doing this, for example, on top of a cupcake, on a bûche de Noël, I would do them on spaghetti. So those are my three options. Now I'm going to use a little bit of piping gel, some corn syrup. You can also use Super Bond. This is a Nicholas Lodge brand product, so you can use a little of that. I'm going to actually use piping gel, but piping gel or corn syrup. Edible glue doesn't really have enough body to it. And so what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to take a little bit of piping gel and just brush that on just to the end carved part of the toothpick. Now I'm going to put my brush, just keep that in my wet towel, because piping gel, just like egg white, will get sort of crusty. And then what I'm going to do here is just going to take my toothpick and I'm just going to push this just underneath the surface. I'm going to push it pretty much right the way to the top. So the toothpick has gone to about here, okay? So you see how it needs to be level. You're just going to flex your mold. So when you take this out, you're going to get this beautiful textural detail on your toadstool mushroom, okay? And then all I do is I repeat the process, okay? So I repeat the process. And as I said, when I do my pine cones, I prefer to make my pine cones one half, let it dry, because pine cones is a little bit more of a complex shape and also enables you to be able to press the dry half onto the soft half. This is, as I said, more basic, so generally you can do these two at the same time. So then again, we're just going to fill this in with your cosmetic sponge. As I said, on this large one, it will just overfill it just slightly, so just trim off the bottom. Okay, just going to trim off the bottom here like that. And then what we're going to do is going to brush some piping gel. So we're going to brush piping gel, making sure especially you get right on that side seam, okay? So we're going to put just a little bit of piping gel over the surface here. And piping gel you can find online, but most cake decorating stores sell this. But also you can use like corn syrup, which is almost a bit like a glucose. Okay, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to then take my two halves. So I'm just going to line that up, just press gently. Now those of you who work in air drying clay, all right, with air drying clay, because it shrinks about 10% when it dries. If you were making these for craft application in air drying clay, then again you would do exactly the same as I'm doing there, because if you make one half, it's going to shrink and that means it's never going to match up, okay? So this would be the way you would also do air drying clay. All right, just going to take this out, and then all I'm going to do here is just going to gently press that where the seam is. And you can use your little companion tool. I'm just going to rub down with my companion tool just to, as I said, put that together. You see how that's going to give you your toadstool or mushroom. Now you can leave the bottom of these square, but I like to, so for example, like on this one here, you can see the bottom of that is square, okay? So I've just left it as the mold does. But then another thing I often do is I create like a little foot on the bottom, because a lot of fungi and mushrooms and that have this little foot on the base of them. This also gives a little bit more stability when you're putting this onto, for example, a cake. So the option's up to you with the foot or without the foot. And if you're doing the foot on there, what I do is I take a pair of tweezers. So I'm using a pair of tweezers like this. And so with my tweezers, I'm just going to go around the bottom of this with the tweezers, and I'm just going to pinch like this, just around. And so this doesn't have to be perfect because you want this irregular shape. And then with my companion tool, I generally just sort of press in a few times around there. So you see how you create the little foot at the bottom of the stalk, all right? So now what I do is take this, I would put this into a block of styrofoam or into a small cake dummy, and these are going to dry. And but you don't have to put them away to dry until after you've done the cap, all right? But these would dry the same time as the cap. But anyway, so this is ready to dry and to use. But we need this to use as you'll see in the next part of the video, I'm going to show you how to do the cap and then use that as a guide. Now, if you were using the option of, for example, doing 2 halves, all right? So this is actually this one here, which will be a number 8 small. So then this one is totally dry. All right, so if you feel more comfortable, or if you're a little heavy-handed and you feel more comfortable using the technique like I use for the pine cones, you can totally do this. So this is a number 8 small. So again, I'll just take see I've got a little bit of fat on my hand there. Just gonna put just a little bit, but you just keep this brush just for this purpose. So this is a number 8 small. Okay, I'm gonna just roll this into a sausage here. Just gonna put a little bit of cornstarch onto there, and again we're just going to press this in. You can see this one, the 8 small, fits perfectly. And what I normally do here, when I have one that fits perfectly, I just take my little flexi scraper and I use my flexi scraper. So you see what I'm actually doing is I'm pressing in with my sponge. This is acting almost like a wall of a dam. It's going to hold the paste in there. So you're going to get like this, all right? So of course, if you're doing the first half of this, you could then put your toothpick in, your wire, or your spaghetti, all right? And then you let that dry. So if you're going to do it in this way, you want to let this dry. So normally I pop this in a food dehydrator at 115 Fahrenheit, which is 46 centigrade. Put it in there for about an hour, all right? And it will be dry enough to use. And then you're going to take your piping gel. So just again, make sure you brush that over the top here. Now, if you're going to do this technique where you make one half, let it dry, and then the soft half, if you want to do the lip on the foot on there, what you can do is you can actually just pinch the foot on one half, okay? Because of course, once this is dry, you can't pinch it. And then when you've done the second half, you just continue the pinching on the second half. All right, so you can do the foot on here. But you see how, if you have this dry, it means you can push this, you can be a little firmer with your pressure there. And then you can put this together, and that will give you, and you see how you're going to get this beautiful texture on here. And that would be the other option, okay? Again, I'm going to pop that into to dry. Now I'm just going to show you the 2 other options we have as far as, I'm going to show you here. This is going to be a number 8 size. Just to get the paste here. So got my paste here. So it's going to be a number 8 size ball of paste. I'm just going to show you about using the wire and then using so this would be the number 8 size. So this is just a regular number 8. So remember, that's 1/3 below, 2/3 above, okay? So when we do this one, so I'm going to do this one here, because I'm just going to show you on this one how we can use wire on this. Now, the slight advantage of wire, it means if you want to bend the stem, meaning that you want the stem curved, then you can do that. And also, the other thing is sometimes on the, for example, if you wanted to sort of have, for example, toadstools coming out the side of the cake, you could actually cut that at an angle with a pair of scissors. So then your mushroom or toadstool will either look like it's growing at an angle or coming out from the side of the cake. Because, a lot of times we see fungus and mushrooms growing out of the side of a rock or thing. So you've got quite a lot of different options here. So on this one here, I'm going to show you the wire technique. So we're going to put so we just have a little bit of and these all have, been created with beautiful natural texture, so they're extremely realistic. So again, you can see how I'm just going to take here, I'm just going to press this in. So you see that's going to fill the mold up level. But just remember, if you wanted a longer stalk on here, you just literally could take a, number 9 size, number 9 small, and it just extends, and you do the same on both halves, all right? The other thing is I will show you, you can also, on the smaller one, you can also stretch the stem as well. Now, of course, on this one here or this one, because these are just to have a little bit of texture on them, these ones you can't really stretch, but you could extend the bottom of them and just have a smooth base on them. It would look perfectly natural, okay? So anyway, so then when you do wire, okay, I'm going to use a 20 gauge wire. You can use green wire, but generally I would recommend probably white because it's not going to notice. And then all I'm going to do here is I'm just going to make a little hook on the end of this. So this is about approximately about a 1/4 of an inch hook. All right, so about 5-6 millimeter hook on there. And again, I'm just going to put a little bit of piping gel onto the hook. And then I'm going to take my hook here. I'm going to put it in on its side. I'm just going to thread this in. Just going to push this up to the top. So it's underneath the level of the piece here. Okay. All right. So that's sort of, and then you would do the second half. So I'm just showing you the different options. And remember, of course, this could be done in white or it could be done in cream. It's going to take this out. And then you're going to do the second half of this. And again, when you get down here, just using your flexi scraper, just going to use your flexi scraper there. Remember, you can also just press the flexi scraper just to make sure that's level. And then we take the piping gel on here. I'm just going to go over the surface of this with my, I'm going to take my second half here. Okay, just going to flex this. Just going to line this up. Just going to just gently press that to get that even there, like so. And then again, you can pinch your foot around the bottom or leave it without a foot, like this. And then with your companion tool, going to come into here like so. And then if you wanted to bend this, you can actually just sort of bend the stem like that. So you can just bend that. So you just use the curve of your thumb and just going to sort of bend it. And so you see how then the actual stem will have a sort of a curved shape. All right. So when you have the toadstool or mushroom attached to that, it's going to have that sort of look like that from the side. There we go. So you can make these, so you can do them straight or, as I said, at an angle. And then the last one I'm going to show you is just going to be the little small one here. So that's going to be done number 6 size. So this is going to be number 6. So I've got 2 number 6 sizes here. There we go. So this is going to be number 6 size. And this is going to be the small one that we use for the, you can see this is the size of these are actually these are the 5 sizes, as you can see here. Okay, so this is the small one here. Okay. And then that one, I'm going to roll that into, but generally I just put a little bit of vegetable fat on my back of my hand, the vegetable shortening, and find that works really, really well. Again, just going to just use your little scraper here. I'm going to push that in. So it's going to just come into level. Now this is spaghetti, all right, so I'm just using spaghetti noodles. On some of my projects, like for example, making my, when I do my pine cone video, I use angel hair pasta, which is thinner. And you can also, if you go to, for example, a specialty, sometimes supermarket, grocery store, you can of course get pasta like spaghetti in different thicknesses. You can also go to an Asian grocery store and you can buy like udon noodles and different noodles thicker than this. So if you wanted to use, for example, if you wanted to do a cake where you wanted everything to be totally edible and you were doing large toadstools like this size stalk, you want to use a thicker spaghetti or thicker noodle, okay? But here I'm just going to break this to about 2.5, 3 inches, about 7 centimeters. Again, just going to put a little bit of piping gel onto the spaghetti, because if you're going to use this in a bûche de Noël or on it means that you could actually totally eat this as well. and then you're going to push that into there. You take this out, so this is going to give you your first one. You can see how if it does come out there, what that means, you just want to be a little bit, as I said, actually maybe it was a little bit small on my paste there. This is actually that's better. But what you do is you just want to skim just under the surface. So it's really easy just to pull it out. But remember, you want to just pull this underneath the surface of the paste there. So you just want to just skim, because this is a little bit smaller. You see, you want to just be right underneath the surface of the paste there. So you can just sort of almost see that. So when you take that out, you're going to get your little stalk like that. And then you would then do the second half here. Just was a little tiny bit small, as I said. This is just a regular number 6 size. But remember, on your instructions, you have all of the sizes there. So remember, if it says small, it goes through the hole. And then obviously, if it's just a regular size, a third below. So again, we're going to put this in. I'm going to just take my little scraper here. I'm going to push that in. You can also do this with your Dresden tool. You can push that in with your Dresden tool. All right, so it's sort of level. So here you then would take the last part there. I'm going to put a little bit of, and then you're going to just put this on like this. Okay. So of course, when this comes out, this gives you your little piece here. So you can make this shorter, but also if you wanted to stretch this down, you can then actually just stretch this down just a little tiny bit to make it a little bit longer. Because if you were doing, say, like something where you had 2, this is the size of the small mushroom, all right? If you had 2 of these, you would maybe want to have one a little bit taller and one a little bit shorter. So that is where you could use this technique. And of course, you're going to lose your definition a little bit on there. So there are 2 ways to do that. You can just roll it into the large one, because this has almost got like a sort of a wood grain type of texture on it. You can just roll it into there like that. Or alternatively, you can also do this on your gill. So you can actually just use the gill and just roll it around. So you're going to get these nice lines back on here, okay? And then you just stretch that down. And again, you could then make your little, so then you can just pinch the bottom of this to give you the, because this is more of a basic shape here. So you can make this longer. And as I said, then you're just going to mark that like that, okay? And that's how we would make, obviously, a shorter or a longer version of the small one. And that will work for both this one and this one, which have the sort of smooth, but like almost a fine tree bark. As I said, these ones here, this one, this one, this one, because they have all of this lovely, beautiful natural detail, you could make them longer just by extending the ball of paste out from the end of the wire. So here you can see we've got the toothpick option, we have the wire option, and we have the spaghetti option. Okay, so choice is yours depending on if it's going to be something that's edible, or as I said, wiring it into a spray, or obviously using it on a cake. So when I come back, I'm going to show you how we do the caps. So now we're going to move on to the cap, all right? So the cap is the top part of this. So there are 5 different caps, all right? So this one is going to have obviously like larger, not perfectly round spots, so like a natural. This one has got like textured spots on here. Then you have one that's more like a shiitake mushroom. It's sort of flatter. And then this one is going to just be a little bit deeper. And then you have a small little mushroom or toadstool in the middle. So all of these can be made as mushrooms or toadstools. A lot of time toadstools obviously have the spots or texture on them, but as I said, they can be, you can do different, as I said, varieties of fungi. Now, when we do this, we're going to be using, as I said, again, this is all on your download. So number 14 small for the large one. And then these ones are going to both be number 12 small. And then we have number 11 here, and then number 8 small for this middle one. All right, so easy to measure on your size guide. So I have here, I'm going to show you the large one. So this is going to be a number 14 small. So that one's to mean that just goes just through the mold, okay? So it's going to be, so say, just want to make it so it just, you don't have to sort of push it through, it just goes through, all right? So you can see here, so that would be a number 14 small. And again, we're going to use just a little tiny bit of vegetable shortening on here. So just going to just brush this in the mold. Of course, you can use your finger as well, but I actually have started using a brush a lot. I just find this is actually a stencil brush. It's got short bristles on here. You use for sort of pouncing when you use stenciling. So it's a painter stencil brush. And I find this just works well to use. But you just keep this just for this purpose, or I don't use it for dusting or painting, because also once you use this for vegetable fat or shortening, you're going to get the oil on the bristles. It's not really going to come out, but you just keep that for that purpose. All right. So again, we're going to just put a little tiny bit of vegetable fat shortening into your mold here. And of course, remember, this could be cream or white. And of course, for some mushrooms, you might even start off with a pale gray, you know, so, but I do all of the colors I showed you on the samples. They were all started off white or cream. And then of course, you're using dusting powders. So you're going to get a nice smooth ball. Okay. I'm going to place this into the mold. Just going to press this in. So if you measure that correctly, that will just fill the mold up. You see, it just fills the mold up to the top there, like so. Now, if you should overfill, now when you're doing a small size, that won't be an issue. But when you're doing, for example, like number 11 size there, if you're a little bit too generous and you do have too much paste, you can actually just trim it off with your little scraper while it's in the mold. Use a sawing action, okay? But as I said, that normally, and if you get a little bit of overfill, you can trim that with scissors as well. Now, this is designed to use, as I'm going to show you, where I take my companion tool. I put my companion tool in the middle of the mold, okay, like this. So the ball end is in the paste. You're going to take the gill and you're going to thread that through the hole. And so this will come down onto the top, all right? You just want to make sure your stick is level. And then you're just going to just pinch around or push around the edge of this. Now, this is quite a soft mold because you've got a lot of beautiful detail on there. So just press just on the top there with your fingers all the way around. So when you take this off, you can see how you're going to have this amazing detail from the mold here, okay? You then take the gill out, the little stick out. Now, so this is going to be the one I would use for the largest one, right? Now, this doesn't have to be dry. So if you were going to make one of each of the mushrooms or toadstools, you make your 5 stalks, okay? And then what we're going to do is going to use this as a guide. Now, I'm using here a wooden dowel, all right? But you could also, it's about the size of a pen or a biro, all right? So that's about the size I'm using. So you could also use something you have around the house, all right? Like a pen, just with a square end. I tried using a balling tool. So I tried using, for example, ball tools or pins, but the rounded end doesn't work because it doesn't give stability. So I found that the square end works better. So what you want to do here is, because of course this is a little bit bigger than the size of the dowel, okay? I'm going to press in the middle and I'm just going to go around just in the center there, like so. So you're going to create like a round hole there, and you want to just take that and make sure that that fits into there, like so, you see? So you're just using that as your gauge. So that is where I found out it works better. So just going to make sure, as I said, that the hole is the right size for that part to fit into, okay? And so then this can go back on your, stand it back up. And then you're just going to flex your mold like this. And here you can see you have your mold. Now, if you have any, it also depends a little bit, like if you press too hard, you're going to get like a little bit, you can just trim that off with your fingers here. All right, so you can just trim that off if you do have a little bit of extra paste on the edge there, okay? And that is sort of how you would do your mushroom or fungi. Now, I found that the way I prefer to dry this is to dry it upside down in convoluted fun foam, or in convoluted foam. So you're just going to place it in the convoluted foam. Just make sure that don't sort of press it too hard in because you don't want to close up that. But what this is going to do is going to then give you like a nice natural shape for your toadstool. So you can see from the side there, it's not perfectly flat, all right? This also means that the surface area will dry on the convoluted foam very, very easily, okay? So that's how you do that one. Now, another option you can actually do is you can also use 2 different colors of paste. You know, like if you were doing, say, like for, let's say, a cooking themed cake, you want to make this into a shiitake mushroom. Shiitake mushrooms have this really, really dark brown, and you could even dust black on top of that, or you could actually use black paste as well. Now, this technique will also, I will show you in my second video where I'm showing more fantasy style mushrooms and toadstools. You could also do this with, for example, white gills and then a red top, okay? And I'm going to show you that technique in my second video. But so here, I'm going to show this one here, which is the flatter one. These are both number 12 small, but as I said, one of them you can see how this is the one that's a little flatter. All right, and then this one is a little bit more domed. You can see the shape, the difference in the shape of the mushrooms, okay? And so we're going to use, so on that one, you're going to take a number, so this will be a 12 small. I'm just going to show you how to do that. So we've got a 12 small, so I've got my paste ready, all right? So it's going to be a number 12 small of the cream color, okay? And I just used the cream gel, so I'm just going to have that underneath a pot. And then for the chocolate brown, this is just, so when you're doing this, or when you're making, for example, let's say 2 little mushrooms, you only need a small amount of brown or a small amount of red. You don't have to do the 115 gram batch. This is just, as I said, just a small amount. So let's say I was going to make 2 of the ones with a brown cap, like 2 shiitake mushrooms. That would be enough to, because I'm going to use a cutter here to cut this out. So you just would think about cutting out 2 little thin cookies. So what you then actually do there is you just literally just take the Tylose pot and you can just put a little bit of Tylose into it, and it will almost like instantly firm up the paste. You will find this will almost like happen. So just do a couple of hits into there. So this is good when you're just doing like, for example, if you're only making like 2 little pine cones, you can use this technique rather than doing a whole batch, okay? And then again, just add a little bit of vegetable shortening to this. All right. And then what you would do is you would, which I've already done, you roll this out, and then I've gone through my pasta machine on number 2 thickness. All right. So I've actually gone through my pasta machine on number 2 thickness. So here I've rolled this out, the chocolate brown, but this could be whatever color you want the gills to be. All right. So this is done with number. And then what I'm going to do here is I'm going to take a cookie cutter, a little round cookie biscuit cutter that wants to be just like a little bit smaller than the size of the inside there. So you see, you're just going to find a round cutter that's a little bit smaller. And what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to just cut this out. All right, I'm going to just keep this in my plastic flap. So in my multi-flap there, so I've got that ready to go. So you have your basically your 2 components ready to go. And then what we do, you're going to take your cream paste. This is a cool technique to use, and as I said, you know, because like especially sometimes if you're doing say fantasy ones, you might want to use red paste on the top and then white gills. This is the way you would do this. All right, so again we're going to put just a little bit of tiny amount. Now we don't use a lot of the fat, and the reason is if you use a lot of fat, it's not going to dry on the mushroom or fungi or a toadstool, and then when you come to dust it, it's going to almost like smear. So you take the cream paste here. So you see how I'm just going to press this into the mold like this. All right, again, I'm going to just use my little scraper. This is called the Flexi Scraper. So it's a new addition to Flower Pro earlier this year. So, and then we're going to take a little bit of fat, which you can just use your finger for, or you could use your brush. I'm going to go over the surface of this with the vegetable fat. And that is what we're going to stick the 2 parts together, a little bit like when I do my calyx. So then you see how I put my brown paste. So my brown paste will then sit on top of the vegetable shortening. Now, if you don't have a companion tool, remember, companion tool comes as a free gift with the Ultimate Filler Flowers. It's also sold separately, sold with a little mini pad and size guides. There's different packages you can buy with this in. But if you don't have that, you could also use a toothpick. All right, so you can use your carved ended toothpick as well as a gauge for there. But this is the way I designed the mold to be used. And then we take your gill. Your gill is going to go over the top there. Remember, make sure that stands straight. I'm just going to press, you won't need a lot of pressure here, but you just want to, because it's very bouncy. All right, because of the way that it's designed. All right, and you're going to take that, you see how you're going to get that beautiful part here. Okay, now also remember when you hollow, you always do that in the mold, because then you're not going to, if you take it out of the mold and try and hollow it, you're going to flatten the design. So then this would be, for example, like say this one here. All right, so again, that's going to be similar. So you're just going to just press that onto the top there, like so. Just going to go around. You can also let these, you can let this part totally dry, and then you could actually just press that in, and then you're going to get almost a ring. But if you've just made them and they're still soft. So we're going to create that effect. you're going to then flex this out. So you see how you're going to, and if you have a little tiny bit of course, dusting powder will get rid of that as well. And on this one, you've got these natural indentations. So you can actually just go in with your companion tool, just create almost like those little lobes. So you see how you're going to get that nice natural shape on the edge of the mushroom. And then also another thing you can do is you can actually just gently like peel the edge back a little bit, because on some mushrooms, the cap, you can actually sort of see the brown. So you see how you can actually create that effect there. So you see, as you can see the cap of that. And then what you would then do is, again, you just would dry this into your convoluted crepe foam, okay? And that is how you would make your caps. And so as you can see, these are the 5 caps. You see, remember, this is the larger one, which is going to have the texture on. This is actually going to, this is the top of this. When this is finished, you have this beautiful natural texture. All right. This is the one that's like the almost shiitake mushroom, a little flatter one. All right. And so this is the one here. This is the one that's a little bit deeper, which I've used for the classic sort of mushroom. So when we think of like button mushrooms and that sort of just a classic type of mushroom. And then this is the small, like a small version with the little tiny dots on here. All right, and then this is your little tiny one there, okay? And then for example, like on this one, where you have that slight over, you see how it's gonna give you that really nice natural look on the edge there. So in fact, I don't trim that off. If when you press it in with the gill mold, it's going to give you that nice natural edge. That really helps. But you can also use these, could be used for shells. You know, you could use these for like sea urchins on under the sea cake. So there's lots of sort of other different fun things you can do with this particular mold. So those are our components. All right, so now what we need to do is let all of the components dry. Okay, so you need to let everything dry. So as I said, I normally would just put it in my food dehydrator for 3 to 4 hours, or just leave these overnight, or until like do them in the morning, leave them till the evening. Because we've got obviously a just modified sugar paste. If you were in a time restraint, you could make these with flour paste or gum paste. They will dry a lot quicker, but also remember, when you're using a denser paste, it's going to, sometimes you're not going to get the same detail as you will when you're using a softer paste like I've shown you. So we're going to let these dry, and when I come back, I'm going to show you the fun part, which is going to be the coloring. So now for the fun part, the coloring. So I'm going to show you just like almost like the shiitake type of coloring and the little sort of wild mushroom here. These both started off as a cream color, which, as I explained in the previous part of the video, gives you a really good foundation when you're doing browns. Now, this one here, which I've done with brown, but I've also used gray on this one. So you see I've got gray on the edge of it. That one I actually started off, you can see, with white, okay? But if you're going to be doing more of the sort of brown colors, then I would generally recommend doing a creamy color. Now, so we're going to use some brown dust, all right? This is some brown dusting powder here. So this is going to be full strength brown. And what I'm going to do here is going to just take some brown, I'm going to put this onto a napkin, and I'm going to just brush from the outside to the inside. So I'm going to use the brush on its side, all right? So you get a little bit more, so almost like just brushing it on like you would stripes. But you're just going to just brush this around the edge of the mushroom. Remember, you could start off, you could use the two-tone version here. You see, then that's already got brown on it. So if time was a constraint, obviously with time constraints, like in a bakery or things like that, that would be something you could consider, like if you did brown. Now, of course, you also, if you're good with an airbrush, you could take an airbrush here and you could use an airbrush and you could just spray this with chocolate. I actually prefer the dusting powder technique personally, because the underneath of a mushroom, you have a little bit of luster on the main mushroom cap, but the underneath of the gill, that's almost like a matte finish. So whereas when you airbrush it, it's going to be more painted looking. So you see how you're going to get chocolate brown all over there. Okay, so now I'm going to take the chocolate brown and I'm going to then just dust that using my brush now, not on its side, but so you see how you're going to get this lovely sort of shaded effect. So you're just going to brush into from the outside to the inside, from source away from source. So it's going to just sort of come up, and you're going to leave the top of this the natural color. If you have where your little indentations are, you can just go in with your brush like this. And I would generally put gloves on to do this. Now, there's several reasons why I would put gloves on. A lot of times in my videos, I don't use gloves for flowers because sometimes it's just sort of easier changing out colors and things like that. But when you use your fingers, your natural oil in your skin and your moisture on your finger will take the dust off. So it's usually better to do this with a glove on. All right, you see how you're going to get this beautiful color on the top there. See, so you sort of almost like bring that in, but you're leaving the top the initial color. Okay. Now then, when we do the base here, again, I'm just going to go around your little foot with my brush like this. And then again, I'm going to brush. Remember, you brush from the source away from the source. That means just think of like a river. It's almost like where the river starts. So you see how you're only brushing in one direction. And I'm going to bring this up about. But you see the beautiful texture you get on here. See, so just going to just bring this up. All right, so you're going to get this lovely coloring onto there. Okay, and I'm leaving the top of that the natural color. So that's pretty much the way I did both of those. All right, you can see I've got the brown on here, and then I've got you sort of almost like come up about half to 2/3 the way up, and then you've got the chocolate brown on there, and then you have the darker brown on the edge of it. All right. I also on this one I used a little bit of black, so I went in with a little bit of black dust, just see how it gives you that slightly darker color on the edge, okay? Now, as far as when you do sort of speckle with techniques, all right, there are generally 3 ways to do that, all right? The first one is to take some brown gel color. I'm just using here some brown Pro Gel, okay? So this is one technique. And then you're going to use some vodka here. Take a brush, and I'm just going to mix this up. All right, so I'm going to get this sort of brown, not too dark, okay? So one technique is to use a sponging method. So you just take a piece of sponge, and you're going to use like a sponging technique, just like if you were painting a wall or doing sponging technique. So what we do there is you're just going to just sponge over the surface. You see how it's going to give you this nice natural look to the top of the mushroom. You know, and you can make this darker, so you could put less vodka in there, but as I said, or just use the gel, but as I said, I like this sort of more muted effects, all right? So you're gonna get this nice texture on the top there, okay? So see, that's one option. Now the second option would be to take a toothbrush, all right? So just use a new toothbrush for this. And then that's the technique I've used on the speckle one here, which actually is on this one here. So you see how you got this very fine speckle effect? I use this technique on shells and things like that. But what you actually would do there is you would take your toothbrush, so you load some brown color onto there, okay? Just gonna pop this into a little styrofoam block. And when you do this, you can, if you're doing this onto a star, like of course you would just do this on the cap. This one is already together. But what you then do is you use your finger, and with your finger you flick against your finger like that, and you see how you're going to get this sort of speckles on the top. And of course you can just do that as much as you want, and you get this really lovely sort of natural speckles on the top. All right. So that's using the the toothbrush technique. All right. And then the third option, which gets a little messy, so just make sure you sort of have a protect your work surface you're working on. And then the third technique, which is actually what I used on this one here, is you're just going to use like a food art pen. I just used a black food art pen, and you're just going to do some little tiny dots over this with the wider end over there. You can also get brown food art pens as well. So I've just used that to do the little speckles, all right? So you've got either a piece of natural sponge, you have a toothbrush technique, or you have the, as I said, you can use the food art pens. And then the other way you can also do that, which is the last technique, would be just to use a brush. So like on this one, you see how it's a little bit more speckled. I just used the brush and just gonna do just some like little speckles onto the mushroom like this. Okay, so just gonna do that. So you're gonna do like some little speckles on the top there. And if you put it, if it's a little bit dark, you can actually just mute that down with a little bit of, as I said, a napkin, that would just take that off, all right? And so that gives you the sort of the nice colors onto there, but you can just do that. This gives you a little bit more of a, so you did like a stippled effect, okay? And you can use that technique for the top of that one, okay? So that's sort of techniques that we use for the brown. Now, so I'm just going to clean this up, and then when I come back, I'm going to show you one which is going to be done like this style of one. I'm going to show you how I do that and the color, and then how I actually put the white on the top of this, which I've used on a couple of varieties of the mushrooms. So I'll be right back. So now I'm going to show you these more like toadstools, all right, and just explain about the different color variations. I'm actually going to show you the classic red one here, all right? And so first of all, we're going to use the chocolate brown on the inside of this. But remember, this could be done white on top and brown paste on the inside. So we're going to use the same technique here. So I'm going to just use the brown. This is really fun to do because if you're doing a cake, you know, you can do different color variations on here. So remember, depending on time of year, because like in autumn, fall time, you can do the sort of the orangey colored ones. And then of course, this would be fun, like the red one here to use on a bûche de Noël on a Yule log. And so there we go. So I'm going to put the brown around the outside of this, all right? So that's going to go around the outside. Now, just to talk about a couple of color variations, you know, this one is also done brown, but what I did there is I didn't bring the brown all the way to the center. So you see how you just come about 2/3 of the way down. So what that means, you get that sort of natural color. This one was done with white, all right? So you get that natural color here. On this one here, this is sort of almost a greeny gray color. So I actually used there some eucalyptus with a tiny amount of moss green in there. So you get almost like a slightly greeny eucalyptus color, which is a gray color. And then I actually added on that one, when we do the accent color, I used a little bit of plum, some plum dust on there, right? Because there really are some, when you actually look on the internet, you do a search on toadstools, there's some are blue and all different colors. I mean, just amazing, all the different color variations that the nature produces. Now on the stem here, because you've got like the tiers, you're going to do the brown on the top tier. Going to be like almost like a skirt effect there, and then a little bit of brown on the bottom as well. So see, I'm just pouncing in with my brush there just to sort of get that in. It's going to bring this up. Again, so you're going to get this beautiful texture into there, like so. You can see like on this one here, it's got these lovely lines on there. So when you put the brown on there, it's going to really emphasize all of that beautiful detail. Okay, and then what we're going to do next is I'm going to use on the one I'm going to show you here, I'm going to do ruby. So I use ruby, which is this sort of beautiful red I use like on red roses. This one here was done with just red. All right, so you can see it's quite a little bit more of an orangey red. All right, and then this one here, I actually used orange. All right, so where I'm going to dust ruby, I dusted all over with orange, and then I dusted a little bit of ruby on the edge. And then this one, I'll talk about this one, but this one was dusted with chocolate. These ones are actually painted with white and vodka. So I'm going to talk about that technique. So I'm going to show you the one with the ruby. So we're going to take the ruby color here. All right, and I was going to just use almost like a scrubbing action. So I'm going to just dust the ruby over the top of this. Now in the second video, in the additional video on the toadstools and mushrooms, where I show the more fantasy type of ones, I will be showing with doing this with red paste, which you could also totally do. So when I showed the technique of doing the cream and brown, you could use red modified sugar paste or rolled fondant. Because again, you know, if time was the issue, then the thing is in a bakery or for production and things, you sometimes can make shortcuts by using colored paste rather than dusting. I actually like the dust because it gives a little bit more of a natural look to that. All right, so you see how you're going to get this red on the top. I'm then going to use a flat brush here. And then what I'm going to do there is I'm going to just put a little bit of red, because I want more of that, just a little bit of red is going to come around the bottom of the tier. So it's going to be like the little tiers you have here. And then the bottom tier as well will have a little bit of red dusted onto that as well. So you see how you're going to get this nice color onto there. And then with some chocolate brown, I'm going to use some chocolate. I'm going to just brush the chocolate just on the edge. You see how I'm coming up just a little bit onto the paste here. So you're going to get this little bit of brown. This just helps to sort of like integrate the two different colors into one. Just gives a little bit more of a natural look to it. Okay, so this is really like how I did the, see, you can see the chocolate on this one. You see I bring the chocolate up from the back, you see? And you got then where I had the brown and then where I have the red, I have the chocolate. So then you're going to, what we're going to do next is going to, so this is going to give you the base coloring onto here. We're then going to do the paint-in technique on this. So for the paint-in technique, I'm just going to get rid of my napkins out of the way here. There we go. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take some white dust. Now this is titanium dioxide, all right? So there's many different brands of this. So most companies that produce dusting powders do white powder. So this is titanium dioxide. You can buy also white gel color, but I would recommend not using white gel because it's almost a little bit too runny. And what happens is when you paint it on the top of the mushrooms, the color, the red would come into the white, turning it pink. So I actually prefer to use powder, okay? So this is what the powder looks like. I'm going to use a sort of a flat brush, quite a wide flat brush here. Don't need a lot. And then what I'm going to do here is I'm going to put a little bit of vodka, a couple of drops of vodka in here. This wants to be quite dry, all right? So it doesn't want to be too wet. And then what we do here is you just hold this on your hand, and then with the white, I'm just going to just brush this just gently over the top here, like so. So don't worry if you get a little bit of, but just going to brush this over the top. So you're almost just going to hit the textural part of from the mold. You see, and it's going to give you this really sort of fantastic, sort of very natural look to there. All right. If you did sort of like have an area where you messed up a little bit, you can actually also go in with your red powder, and you can, like, if you get too much white on there, but as I said, you don't, these little tiny, that gives it a really nice natural look. All right. So that is how we would do the top part there. Now, so those are your pieces there. Now you do have options, you know, you can do like painting, you could do little brown spots, you know, so you could add some little brown spots onto there, again, using a paintbrush or your pen, or the technique of using the toothbrush or the sponge, you know, so you can do things on there. But as I explained, like on this one, I used the green, the eucalyptus with a little tiny bit of moss green, and you see then I've just done a little bit of plums. You're gonna get this pinky color on the edge, and again I've gone pink on the edge where I did the brown, and then I've done the white on the top. All right. On the orange one, now the orange one is a little different, and I didn't paint that. What I actually did is I dusted that one. So with that one, I took the brown dust. So with brown dust, and then what I actually did there is I brushed over the top of it like that. Whereas I did the white with the alcohol, this is just brown dust on its own. And I just go over the top of this, all right? And so you're going to get these chocolate brown spots on here. And remember, I said that one, I just brought the color down, not as far. But anyway, so it just gives you lots of options there. So these components are now ready for the next stage, which is going to be for assembly. And so I'm going to show you. And now you could put them together and then dust them. I personally prefer and recommend that you color them individually, the two components. And then once they've been colored, then we're going to be ready to put these together. So when I come back, I'm going to show you how we assemble these together and a couple of different options there. And then we're going to talk about how to steam them and glaze them. There are three ways to stick the mushroom or toadstool together. Now the first one is going to be using either isomold, or you can use also some, so like a clear isomold or white isomold, or you can also take, if you're only doing a small amount, if you take like a peppermint, and what I do is just run this under hot water, it will actually take the little green stripes or red stripes off of the Starlight mints. And I just got, crushed them up, and I just got 2 of them in there, and I microwave that for about 30 seconds. So what this is going to do is going to give you like molten candy. You can, said this will be the same as isomalt, but if you don't have access to isomalt, you can also use, like in the UK, like glacier mints, which are clear mints as well. You can use those. Now be careful because this is hot, but this is going to set this instantly. So what we would then do is you're just going to dip the end of this. I've just got this on a little heater just to keep it. So we're going to put some of that onto the end of there, like so. And then just going to put that into the center of your mushroom toadstool. All right. And see, that's going to basically set almost instantly. Okay. So that's obviously an edible, as I said, like quick drying glue. So this is just, and this is, you just microwave this. I've got this on a little candle heater. This is just for a demonstration, just so because I microwave this prior to the start of filming. So I can just keep this, but you just, if it gets thick, just put it back in the microwave. Remember I said you have to be really careful of this, because just like working with isomold, if you follow like Simi Cake's tutorials on isomold, you need to make sure you should have gloves on. But as I said, if you don't have access to isomold, hard candy like peppermints or that will work. But remember, just as I said, if you literally just run these under hot water, the little stripes, the green or red stripes will come off. So it would just leave you like a white candy. Okay, so that's one option. Now, second option would be for air drying clay, but also the fact is that, these have toothpicks or wires in them. So just need a little bit more of the glue on there. There we go. So they have, so if you have like as I said, a clay one, you can use. And then if you're using the, like for example, the white sugar, you can just dust a little bit of chocolate brown in there once that's once it's dry. So other option is you could use a glue gun. Because the fact that this does have, this has toothpicks in it, it's not something you're actually going to encourage somebody to eat. So you could use a glue gun, all right? So that would be another option, would be to take a little bit of hot glue, put on the top, and then glue the two together, okay? And obviously, as I said, that's another option you have. And then the third option, which I would use for edible versions. So if you were doing, obviously, if this had spaghetti in and I was going to use it on, say, a bûche de Noël, what I would actually do there is I'd use some softened paste. So what you'd actually do there is you take a little bit of your paste you made it with. So in this case, that would be some cream color. So I have a little bit of cream. And then what I would do there, just going to soften that down. And then I'm going to mix this up to make like a thick glue. So you just would take this, you just add just a little bit of piping gel. Just going to use here a little needle tip applicator. And then you can just use a little spatula here. And then what you do here is you're just going to mix this up to make a really, really thick glue. Now this one, you're going to have to then let this sit for about sort of an hour or so, or put it in your food dehydrator for about 15, 20 minutes. You're going to make a really, really thick glue. So it wants to be, as I said, almost like stiff royal icing consistency. As I said, for craft, as I said, you can use a glue gun because obviously the craft ones, if you're making them from air drying clay or polymer clays, those of you in our obviously group that do craft. Glue gun, as I said, isomold, or as I said, sugar candy can be used. That will give you an instant bond. And then this is the third option. So then what I normally do is use just my Dresden tool. And you can put this into the middle here. And again, once this is set, you can just, if there's any squashes out, you can use, and then see, then that will go onto there like so, okay? And then usually what I do is dry these upside down. So what I would actually do is if you take your convoluted foam like this, and you can either put a napkin onto here, or you would put some plastic wrap, some cling film over here, because you don't want to get the dusting powder on your foam. All right, but you can just take them and then you just would dry them upside down like this, all right? And then you let them till they're obviously dry, and then you would go back in with, as I said, some dust. So here I could just use a little bit of brown dust, a little bit of brown dust there. just to obviously disguise the softened paste but of course, if you use a glue gun or you use clear isomalt, then of course it's not going to notice, okay? So that will be the next step. So we let these dry, and then I'm next going to show you the final steps of finishing off the toadstool mushrooms. So I have just, once it's obviously set, your softened paste, or once you're obviously, ready to do it, you're just going to put a little bit of brown around the bottom. So that will just disguise the softened paste or the sugar. But remember, with clear isomalt or obviously a glue gun, you're not going to see that, all right? So anyway, so then what we're going to do is going to steam. Now, when you steam this, what I'm going to do first is I'm going to just steam the top. Now, I don't want the steam to get to the gills, because those want to be like a dull surface. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to put the steam. So I'm just going to gently steam the top of the mushroom there.